Thank you, Nigel. Well, I promised back at our spring conference in Margate that UKIP's 2015 manifesto would set us apart from the old parties. Running through it, I said, like lettering through a stick of rock, would be UKIP's clear belief in Britain. I promised it would celebrate our great country, draw a firm line under accusations we're a single-issue party, and put forward common-sense solutions to the economic crisis, the energy crisis and the employment crisis. I said it would introduce fresh thinking around childcare and education, welfare, foreign aid, and how we look after our veterans and our older people, our farmers and our fishermen. All in addition to tackling two of the most pressing issues for the British public, the need for an EU referendum and immigration. Well, I think my team and I have achieved all these aims and much more. I think it's a great shame that the other parties don't share UKIP's positive vision for Britain as a proud, sovereign nation, a country respected on the world stage, a major player in global trade with influence and authority when it comes to tackling the pressing international issues of the day. UKIP is optimistic about Britain's future outside the EU, and today our manifesto sets out clearly how we will, beyond a shadow of doubt, continue to trade with the EU and enjoy good relationships with EU member countries after Brexit. We don't need to be in political union with the EU to play a significant role in Europe. We've nothing to lose and everything to gain from Brexit, not least the ability to bank £9 billion a year that we will recoup from direct contributions alone and put that money into projects we know can be of far greater benefit to Britain. The simple fact is, whatever else you hear in the course of this election campaign, UKIP is the only party with the money. We're the only political party that can make spending commitments without raising taxes or adding a single penny to the national debt. We can give more to the NHS, to defence, the police, prison service and border agency. We can cut business rates, support students and carers, incentivise house building, honour the military government and, yes, give much-needed tax cuts to both the lowest paid and that squeezed middle. And what's more, we're the only party whose fiscal plans have been fully costed and independently verified, as you can see in this 20-page document accompanying our manifesto today. We can show you the money because we have the money. And we have the money because we are not afraid to tackle head-on the big issues the other parties would frankly rather forget about. Take HS2. UKIP's made no secret of the fact that we'll scrap this white elephant, saving £4 billion in capital expenditure by the end of the Parliament. Another taboo we want to break, the Barnett formula, disowned by Lord Barnett himself and dissed by two parliamentary committees. Yet Westminster is far too worried about the wrath of the Scots to replace this outdated funding formula for the devolved nations with a needs-based system. Well, UKIP isn't frightened, and we will replace it, phasing in the changes to save £5.5 billion a year by the end of the Parliament. Another taboo I want to break this morning is the huge overseas aid budget. We've learned this week that the National Crime Agency is setting up a new department to prevent misuse of the massive £11 billion foreign aid budget, proving what UKIP has long said. Far too much of the money is eaten up by corruption and falls into the wrong hands. What's more, aid goes to countries that have their own space and nuclear weapons programmes. It's spent on projects without clear or measurable outcomes. Much of it goes to middlemen who run it for profit. Aid, far from helping the starving in the world, has in some respects become a fat cat industry. We'll cut the overseas aid budget to 0.2% of GNI. That's the same as the United States. This still leaves us a substantial £4 billion to meet our international responsibilities, more than given by Spain and Italy combined. We'll prioritise emergency relief, clean water and sanitation programmes, and initiatives that provide healthcare and inoculation against preventable diseases. In other words, the kind of projects the British taxpayer expects and wants to see their hard-earned cash spent on. UKIP also believes the cost of government can be cut dramatically without any noticeable effect on performance. In the summer of 1940, when Britain was facing its greatest crisis in history at the outset of the Second World War, the government had 9 cabinet ministers. Now we have 22 Secretaries of State, and I think it's at least 87 ministers or parliamentary under-secretaries of state. The Department for International Development, the Department for Energy and Climate Change, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. These are all departments we believe we could merge into others. The money we save from leaving the EU, replacing the Barnett formula, scrapping HS2, reducing the size of government and decreasing the overseas aid budget, taken together with ending funding to what we call fake charities or state-sponsored lobbying and health tourism, while reaping a modest income from charging foreign lorries to use our roads, gives us a huge sum to invest in Britain, over £32 billion a year by 2020. And again, as I've already said, this is fully costed, independently verified, and without a penny to the national debt or raising taxes. More money to spend means more money to go back to the taxpayer. We'll take everyone out of minimum wage, out of tax, and raise the personal allowance to £13,000 a year at least. That's higher than any other party is pledging. We'll also raise the 40% tax threshold to £55,000 to provide a boost for middle-income earners who are no longer the wealthy in the country this tax was meant for, but they're school teachers, train drivers, senior nurses. And as Nigel said, we'll give even more help to the squeezed middle by introducing a new mid-rate of tax set at just 30% for those earning between £45,300 and £55,000 a year. UKIP is proud to put money back in your pocket. Couples will get a boost for our plans to raise the transferable tax allowance to £1,500. And we'll help families who want to leave their treasured possessions to their children by abolishing inheritance tax completely. Our plans won't discriminate against single people or those who have personal assets that don't take the form of bricks and mortar. The money only UKIP can find will also make a significant contribution to tackling a growing scandal in our country, the appalling way in which many of our vulnerable elderly people are treated. According to Age UK, there are now nearly 1 million people between the ages of 65 and 89 who have social care needs that aren't being met. UKIP will reverse the Coalition's cuts to social care by spending an additional £1.2 billion every year by the end of the next Parliament, and making services more efficient by bringing the NHS and social care together. This is another common-sense solution that will have a knock-on effect of helping solve the problem of 1 million hospital bed days lost every year because patients can't be discharged if they don't have enough help at home. The NHS itself, we've already said UKIP will fund 20,000 new nurses, 8,000 new doctors and 3,000 new midwives. We'll put a GP into every A&E, improve mental health services and scrap those hated hospital parking charges. And today, I want to talk about a new health pledge in our manifesto. We will build a dedicated, fully staffed, fully equipped military hospital. Britain is the only major country in Europe that no longer has one, and it's time that changed. Our armed forces must have access to expert care, and our new 500-bed military hospital with accommodation for 150 family and friends on site will meet the specific needs of serving forces, personnel and veterans. Looking after our armed forces is a priority for UKIP, and we feel especially strongly about the need to support veterans. For those who are facing homelessness, we will open 8 halfway house hostels over the next 5 years, as well as build 500 affordable rent homes every year for ex-forces personnel. These measures will go a long way towards compensating our brave armed forces who have been so badly let down over the course of the last government. Under the terms of our NATO membership, we should be spending 2% of GDP on defence, yet UKIP is the only party that is actually pledging to meet those obligations. We'll phase in our increased defence spending, providing an additional £4 billion a year by 2020 to return funding for our armed forces to the level it reached before the coalition made such deep and damaging cuts. UKIP will rebuild our armed forces and restore them to their rightful place among the most professional, flexible and effective fighting force in the world, able to meet the security demands of the modern era. Our spending plans also mean we can make sure armed forces on active service overseas do not pay any income tax. It's the right thing to do, as is bestowing a National Defence Medal to all our veterans, regardless of their rank or length of service. To strengthen our internal security, UKIP will put an additional 6,000 frontline personnel into the border agency, police force and prison service. We'll draw a line under the coalition's cuts and get our law enforcement agencies back into a fit state. We'll give former servicemen and women first call on these jobs. So not only will UKIP secure our borders, put more police on the streets and deliver safer prisons, we will fully honour the military covenant too. UKIP is also the party of small business. We'll cut business rates by offering 20% small business rate relief to potentially 90% of business properties, some 1.5 million in total, that have a rateable value of less than £50,000. And because cash flow is difficult enough at the best of times, and no small business should have to act as a banker for their clients, we'll introduce a scheme to stop big companies making repeated late payments to smaller companies. When payments haven't been made, we'll allow small companies to provide evidence of repeated late payments to HM Revenue and Customs in the strictest confidence. HMRC will then carry out an inspection of the big company's records. If they're found to be systematically exceeding their contractual terms of payments, they'll be fined. Fines will escalate for repeat offenders and be noted in the offending company's statutory accounts. I think that will solve the problem. While we're on the matter of business and employment, let's look at pensions. When you've looked forward to your retirement, sudden changes to the state pension age can wreck your plans. UKIP will ease the pain caused by recent changes by introducing a flexible state pension window. In the same way that you can currently delay taking your state pension in exchange for a slightly higher amount, we'll give pensioners the option to take their pension slightly earlier for a lower amount, from the age of 65. Our proposals will especially help women who've borne the brunt of recent changes. And we will, of course, continue all pensioner benefits, such as free bus passes and TV licences, the winter fuel allowance, free prescriptions and so on, without means testing. Not only that, by repealing the Climate Change Act, which makes energy companies add, or will make them add, nearly £9.8 billion onto our energy bills by 2020, we'll cut fuel bills for everyone, for every household, by an average of £197 by then. And because it's discrimination, to put it frankly, we'll also make the way you pay your bills fairer by stopping energy companies charging extra for customers who use prepayment meters or prefer to pay quarterly paper bills. UKIP will increase the carers allowance too. Millions give up work or work reduced hours to look after elderly or disabled relatives. They deserve, at the very least, to be paid the same amount as job seekers. So we'll raise the carers allowance from £62.10 per week to £73.10 a week, the higher rate of job seekers allowance, and put an extra £572 a year in their pockets. To help the students of today who have the skills we need tomorrow, those with degrees in science, technology, engineering, mathematics or medicine will not have to repay tuition fees, provided they work in their discipline and pay tax in the UK for 5 years after graduating. And to increase much-needed housing stock, UKIP will offer developers grants of up to £10,000 per unit to build on brownfield sites if land needs essential remediation work to make it fit for building on. And by exempting properties built on brownfield from stamp duty on first sale up to the £250,000 threshold, we'll keep our greenfields green, protect our countryside and incentivise the building of 1 million new homes by 2025. Now, because UKIP believes in helping the most vulnerable in society, we'll put 800 advisors into 800 food banks. This means those who are struggling can get help for other problems they may have, such as debt, family breakdown, addiction, or to get support if they need legal or employment advice. UKIP is determined to prevent those who've already fallen on hard times from slipping any further. Under our plans, there'll be no bedroom tax and no threats to housing benefit from the under 25s, and we'll scrap Atos-style work capability assessments. While UKIP will not condone the benefits lifestyle and we will support a lower cap on benefits, we will not join any race to the bottom on welfare cuts. Today, UKIP draws a line in the sand and throws down the gauntlet to the other parties. We are advocating common sense and compassion. We say this is how taxpayers' money should be spent. This is how we can get better value for money here at home for the people of Britain on responsible social projects. And remember, our sums add up. This is not pie-in-the-sky policy making. It's costed and it's realistic. If the people of Britain choose to follow our pathway out of the EU and into the world, it could become reality within months. Under our vision for direct democracy, the people of Britain could also access the heart of government within months. UKIP believes in people power, and every 2 years will allow a national referendum on the issue of greatest importance to the British public, gathered via an approved petition of more than 2 million signatures. The outcome will be included in the Queen's speech, so the public can and will directly affect legislation. We'll also offer real recall. We'll make MPs and other elected officials answerable to their constituents. We should be able to tell them, you're fired, if they deserve to be, and UKIP will give you real power to sack your MP. Parents under UKIP will have far more choice over where to send their children to school. We'll bring back grammar schools and increase vocational and technical colleges. We'll also free up teachers' workloads by cutting down on the paperwork that's taken the joy out of the profession for too many. We'll give parents greater freedom over how they use their childcare vouchers, allowing them to club together to hire a nanny or childminder, for instance. And by requiring local authorities to keep a register of childcare providers willing to offer emergency care at short notice, mums and dads can have easy access when they most need it. On a more serious note on childcare, we want to hold a thorough review of child safeguarding. Despite more rules and regulations than ever, the system is clearly not protecting our children as it should be, and we will investigate failings without fear or favour. UKIP's also the party of animal welfare. Out of the EU, UKIP will end the transport of live animals for slaughter that Brussels continues to allow. We'll install CCTV in every abattoir to ensure the highest standards are met, and we'll triple the maximum jail sentences for those convicted of animal cruelty and torture, also imposing lifetime bans to prevent them from ever owning or looking after animals again. Now, I think I've already covered quite a lot of ground for a single-issue party. Still, that doesn't stop the simple fact that UKIP is the only party prepared to face up to the reality of the highest levels of immigration on record. But let me make it clear. UKIP is not anti-immigration. Immigrants are not the problem. It's our current immigration system that's broken. UKIP will welcome immigrants from across the globe, including EU member states. We will never pull up the drawbridge, as has been suggested. We'll simply start to control who walks over it, as nearly 200 other countries already do worldwide. We must end the unsustainable pressure on housing, school places and the NHS, and the downward pressure on wages, so we can enable living standards to rise again and for unemployment to fall, and I mean a genuine fall. A 5-year moratorium on immigration for unskilled workers will cut it by 150,000 and get young British workers back into work. New migrants will not be able to access benefits or non-urgent NHS treatment until they paid tax and national insurance for 5 years in Britain. That alone will act as a disincentive. There will be no amnesty for illegal immigrants, and we will not let foreign criminals enter or remain in Britain. I'm proud of our immigration policy. UKIP will not discriminate against non-EU countries, and not least against our old friends in the Commonwealth. We won't make it harder for an Indian engineer or a scientist from Namibia to enter Britain than an unskilled labourer from the Czech Republic, as our current government has done. But we can only control immigration by leaving the European Union, and that means voting UKIP. Without UKIP MPs in the House of Commons to hold the old party's feet to the fire and make them keep their promises or change their intransience, you will never, never get an in-out EU referendum. How many times have we already been promised one? By Tory, by Labour, and yes, even the Lib Dems. How many times have they gone back on their word? Without UKIP MPs, they will backslide again. So not only if you want an EU referendum do you need to put your faith in UKIP. I hope today's manifesto will make you want to put your faith in UKIP, because we've produced our independently audited common sense manifesto that believes in Britain and puts the people of Britain first. Finally, I just want to say I've been very fortunate to have a bright, astute and incredibly hard-working team working with me on this. You know who you are, and I give you my heartfelt thanks. Thank you for bringing this manifesto to fruition with me, and thank you for allowing me to share UKIP's vision of Britain's true potential.